Most people are taught, directly or indirectly, that money is the finish line, that if you just earn more, everything else will fall into place. Freedom, confidence, security, meaning. And it's an understandable belief. Money does solve problems. It creates options, but here's the trap. When money becomes the target, your thinking narrows. Your decisions become reactive. You start asking what pays the fastest, instead of what actually matters. And psychologically, that shift changes everything. When you chase money, you outsource your sense of worth to external rewards. You begin measuring yourself by numbers on a screen instead of the impact you create in the real world. Philosophically, that's a fragile way to live, because money is a lagging indicator. It shows up after value has already been delivered. Treating it as the goal is like staring at the shadow and ignoring the object creating it. Think about how value actually works. Value is created when you reduce pain, increase pleasure, or expand possibility for someone else. That's true whether you're an entrepreneur, an employee, an artist, or a leader. Money is simply the marketplace's way of saying, what you did mattered. But if you reverse the order, if you say, I want the money first, then I'll worry about value, you end up cutting corners, compromising integrity, and burning trust. And trust, once lost, is almost impossible to buy back. Psychologically, this is where frustration sets in. People who chase money often feel stuck, even when they're earning more than they ever have. Why? Because the human mind isn't wired to be fulfilled by accumulation alone. We're wired for contribution, growth, and progress. When those needs aren't met, no amount of income quiets the internal restlessness. You might win financially and still feel like you're losing internally. Contrast that with people who obsess over value. They ask better questions. How can I become more useful? What skill, if mastered, would make me indispensable? Where is there a real problem that no one wants to take responsibility for? These questions expand the mind instead of shrinking it, and over time something powerful happens. Opportunities start finding them. Not because they're lucky, but because value is magnetic. From a philosophical standpoint, this aligns with an old but timeless idea. Purpose precedes reward. Every meaningful system in nature works this way. Trees don't chase fruit. They grow strong roots, and fruit becomes inevitable. Muscles don't chase strength. They endure tension, and strength follows. Human value works the same way. You don't chase compensation, you earn it through depth, skill, and service. Now, this doesn't mean money is unimportant or that ambition is wrong. It means money should be the scoreboard, not the game. When you focus on the scoreboard, you play tight, anxious, and short-term. When you focus on the game, on mastery, discipline, and contribution, you play free, creative, and long-term. Ironically, that's when the scoreboard starts lighting up. The school of hard knocks teaches this lesson brutally but effectively. Failure strips away illusions. It shows you very quickly that entitlement has no value in the real world. The market doesn't care how hard you tried or what you think you deserve. It rewards what works, and what works is value delivered consistently under pressure over time. People who embrace this mindset stop asking, how do I make more money? And start asking, how do I become more valuable? That's a subtle shift, but it's a life-altering one. Because value compounds, skills stack. Reputation builds, and money, instead of being chased, becomes attracted. If there's one idea to walk away with, it's this. Stop running after the reward and start becoming the reason the reward exists. When you commit to adding real value, money stops being the destination and becomes the inevitable result of who you choose to become. Once you stop obsessing over money and start focusing on value, reality steps in as your greatest teacher. This is where the school of hard knocks takes over. And unlike formal education, it doesn't care about your intentions, your background, or your potential. It only responds to your actions. You get instant feedback, and it's rarely gentle. Most people underestimate how powerful failure really is. Psychologically, failure triggers discomfort, embarrassment, and self-doubt, emotions we're conditioned to avoid. But those emotions aren't the enemy, they're signals. They point directly to the gap between who you are and who you need to become. In that sense, failure is clarity. It removes fantasy and replaces it with truth. Classrooms are designed to be safe. Mistakes are graded, not punished. In the real world, mistakes cost time, money, reputation, and sometimes relationships. That pressure changes how lessons land. When the stakes are real, learning goes deeper. You don't just understand the lesson intellectually, you integrate it neurologically. Pain locks in memory far more effectively than comfort ever could. This is why experience beats theory every time. You can read about resilience, but you don't develop it until something goes wrong and you refuse to quit. You can study leadership, but you don't earn it until people are watching how you respond under stress. The school of hard knocks doesn't teach concepts, it forges character. Philosophically, this taps into an ancient truth: growth requires friction. Without resistance, there is no strength. Without uncertainty, there is no courage. Modern culture sells the idea that success should be smooth, fast, and painless. But that narrative leaves people unprepared for reality. When hardship shows up, as it always does, they interpret it as failure instead of initiation. Here's the critical shift. Setbacks are not signs you're on the wrong path. They're often proof you're on a real one. Easy paths don't demand much from you. Hard paths demand everything, but they give you something in return: competence. And competence builds confidence that can't be taken away because it's earned, not imagined. The school of hard knocks also exposes entitlement. It shows you very quickly that effort alone doesn't equal results. You can work incredibly hard on the wrong thing and still lose. That realization humbles you, but it also sharpens you. You start paying attention, you adapt, you refine your approach. And that adaptability is one of the most valuable skills a human being can develop. Psychologically, people who avoid failure tend to avoid growth. They stay in familiar environments, repeat safe patterns, and protect their ego at the expense of their potential. People who engage failure differently, who study it instead of resisting it, develop what psychologists call antifragility. They don't just withstand pressure, they improve because of it. This is why experience creates wisdom faster than information ever could. Information tells you what should work. Experience shows you what actually does. And when those two conflict, experience always wins. The market, relationships, and life itself don't reward what sounds good. They reward what holds up under pressure. Over time, something interesting happens to people who embrace this school. They become calm in chaos. They stop panicking when things go wrong because they've been there before. They trust themselves not because they're arrogant, but because they've survived enough storms to know they can navigate the next one. That kind of self-trust is priceless. The irony is that many people spend their lives trying to avoid the very experiences that would make them capable of the success they want. They wait to feel ready, confident, or qualified. But readiness is a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite for it. The school of hard knocks doesn't wait for you to feel prepared. It prepares you by demanding you show up anyway. So if life feels difficult right now, resist the urge to see it as a problem. See it as training. Ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? And who do I need to become to handle this better next time? Those questions turn pain into progress. Because in the end, the lessons you earn through struggle don't just change what you do. They change who you are. And once you're shaped by real experience, no circumstance can ever take that away from you. Once you've learned to stop chasing money and you've been shaped by real-world experience, the next truth becomes unavoidable. Value isn't accidental. It's built deliberately, patiently, and often quietly. And it's built through three forces that never go out of style: skills, service, and consistency. Let's start with skills, because skill is proof. Anyone can talk, anyone can promise, but skill demonstrates. Psychologically, skill gives you leverage over uncertainty. When you know you can execute, you don't need external validation to feel confident. You don't panic when conditions change because you have something concrete to rely on. In a noisy world, skill is clarity. Philosophically, skill represents respect for reality. It says, I'm willing to submit to the process. Mastery requires humility, repetition, and time, 3 things the ego resists. But the market rewards mastery relentlessly. It doesn't care how long it took you to learn. It only cares that you can deliver when it matters. Then there's service, which is where value becomes human. Skill alone can make you competent, but service makes you relevant. Service shifts the focus from what can I get to what do you need, and that question changes how people experience you. When others feel genuinely helped, not manipulated, not sold to, but supported, you earn trust, and trust is the real currency behind every opportunity. Psychologically, serving others pulls you out of self-obsession. Anxiety shrinks when attention expands. When you're focused on contribution, you spend less time managing fear and more time solving problems. This is why people who commit to service often report higher levels of fulfillment, even before external success shows up. They're aligned internally, but skills and service mean very little without consistency. Consistency is what turns potential into reputation. It's easy to show up once. It's impressive to show up repeatedly. The human brain is wired to trust patterns, not promises. When your actions are reliable over time, people relax around you. They stop questioning your intent and start counting on you. From a philosophical lens, consistency is integrity in motion. It's doing the right thing when no one is watching, not because it's rewarded immediately, but because it's who you've decided to be. This is where long-term value is born, not in grand gestures, but in small, repeated commitments kept over time. Here's what most people miss. Becoming valuable is not about doing more. It's about becoming better at what matters. Scattered effort dilutes impact. Focused effort compounds it. When you choose a small set of skills that solve real problems, commit to serving others through those skills, and show up consistently, you become hard to replace. The school of hard knocks reinforces this lesson quickly. You learn which skills actually move the needle and which ones are just noise. You learn that good intentions don't excuse poor execution. And you learn that people remember how you made their lives easier far longer than they remember what you said. There's also a psychological shift that happens as you build real value. You stop needing approval. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger. You're less reactive because you're grounded in capability. And that inner stability changes how others respond to you. People sense competence. They feel reliability. And opportunities grow out of that perception naturally. This is why you individuals don't beg for chances. They attract them. They don't advertise desperation. They demonstrate usefulness. And usefulness is rare enough that it stands out without effort. If you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or invisible right now, the solution isn't more self-promotion. It's deeper development. Ask yourself, what skill would make me undeniably useful? Who can I serve right now without expectation? What standard can I commit to maintaining every single day? Those questions point you toward leverage instead of noise. Because in the end, value is not something you claim, it's something others experience. And when your skills solve problems, your service builds trust, and your consistency proves character, you don't just succeed. You become someone success naturally moves toward. By the time you understand that money follows value, that experience forges competence, and that skills, service, and consistency make you indispensable, one final truth comes into focus. Short-term wins are seductive, but long-term impact is transformative. This is where most people quietly fall off, not because they lack talent, but because they underestimate the power of patience and overestimate the value of speed. The human brain is wired for immediate reward. Neurologically, quick wins release dopamine, giving us a rush that feels like progress. But that same mechanism can sabotage us. When you optimize for fast results, you often trade depth for speed, integrity for convenience, and growth for comfort. Psychologically, this creates a cycle of constant chasing, always moving, never arriving. Long-term thinkers play a different game. They understand that value compounds, skills deepen, relationships strengthen, reputation solidifies. None of this happens overnight. But once momentum builds, it becomes difficult to stop. Philosophically, this is the difference between consuming outcomes and cultivating systems. Outcomes are temporary, systems endure. Think about legacy not in a grand or dramatic sense, but in a practical one. Legacy is simply the residue of consistent behavior over time. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's the level of trust you've built, the problems you've solved, and the standards you've maintained. You can't fake that, and you can't rush it. The school of hard knocks reinforces this lesson through consequence. People who chase shortcuts eventually pay for them, sometimes financially, sometimes reputationally, sometimes internally. Short-term gains often come with long-term costs that aren't visible at first. And by the time they show up, the damage is already done. Psychologically, long-term thinkers experience less anxiety and more clarity. Why? Because they're not constantly reacting. They're responding from principle. When your decisions are guided by a long-term vision, you don't need every move to work immediately. You're willing to be misunderstood for a season if it means being respected for a lifetime. This mindset changes how you handle failure. Instead of asking, "Why didn't this work?" you ask, "What does this teach me for the next decade?" Failure becomes data, not identity. And that shift alone keeps people in the game long enough to win it. There's also a moral dimension to long-term impact. When you prioritize contribution over extraction, you build something that benefits others beyond yourself. Businesses become institutions, careers become crafts, success becomes stewardship. You stop asking, "How much can I get?" and start asking, "What am I responsible for building?" Ironically, this is when financial success becomes more stable. Long-term value creators aren't dependent on trends, hacks, or constant reinvention. They evolve, but from a foundation. And that foundation gives them resilience when markets shift and circumstances change. Most people don't fail because they lack intelligence or opportunity. They fail because they quit too early or compromise too often. They choose comfort over character in small moments, not realizing those moments accumulate. Long-term impact is built in those quiet decisions when no one is watching and there's no immediate reward. So the real question becomes, what are you building that will still matter 5, 10, 20 years from now? Not just in terms of income, but in terms of capability, trust, and influence. Are your daily actions aligned with the future you say you want, or just the relief you want right now? Because time is the ultimate multiplier. It magnifies discipline or distraction, integrity or shortcuts, purpose or drift. And while you can't control how fast results show up, you can control what you invest in consistently. If there's one thing to carry forward, it's this: short-term gains impress, but long-term impact endures. Choose to build something that outlasts the moment, and let time do the rest.